Introduction to Liability Insurance, provided by the Risk Management Services Division of the Georgia Department of Administrative Services. The goal of this video is to define liability insurance and why it is needed, describe the primary policy documents, define the types of liability insurance provided by the state, and answer common questions about each type of liability insurance. So, what does liability mean? This is the state of being responsible for the consequences of one's acts or omissions. What is liability insurance? Liability insurance protects individuals and organizations from being held responsible for injury or damage to another person or their property. The state government and its agencies interact with the public throughout the state. Naturally, things can happen during day-to-day operations which result in injury, damage to property, and financial harm. Without some form of protection from the resulting litigation, the function of the state government and its agencies would be seriously impacted. So the state government has established the liability insurance programs to provide this protection. The three programs we will cover in this video are automobile liability, general liability, and professional liability insurance. The two main policy documents which govern the liability insurance programs are the State Tort Claims Policy and the General Liability Agreement. The primary difference between the documents is that the State Tort Claims Policy governs claims and litigation that come through the state courts, and the General Liability Agreement applies to claims and litigation at the federal court level. The State Tort Claims Policy and the General Liability Agreement are insurance policy documents that govern the liability limits, conditions of coverage, exclusions, and any reserved immunities related to the liability insurance programs. To view full copies of the State Tort Claims Policy and General Liability Agreement, visit the DOAS website and navigate to the indicated area under Risk Management. The majority of the claims will fall under the State Tort Claims Policy. For example, claims related to fall, slip, and trip incidents, vehicle accidents, and property damage, all involving third parties. Legal representation is provided by the Georgia Attorney General's Office. Liability limits are set at $1 million per person or $3 million per occurrence. No punitive damages can be awarded under this policy. This policy covers occurrences worldwide, but the claim or suit must be brought in the state of Georgia. The General Liability Agreement defines liability coverage for claims and lawsuits that fall outside of the tort claims policy, such as federal claims and lawsuits, for example, wrongful termination, errors and omissions, and false arrest and detention. Liability limits are set at $1 million per person or $3 million per occurrence. Although limited to federal cases, it includes coverage for damages that result in bodily injury, personal injury, or property damage. The General Liability Agreement also has a reimbursement of legal fees provision for cases involving defense of a professional license or criminal defense. The criminal defense provision requires that it be related to official duties and that the defendant succeed in court. Approval by the Attorney General is required. Next, let's describe each type of liability insurance and answer some common questions about each one. First, we will focus on automobile liability. The purpose of the auto liability insurance coverage is to protect you, the state employee, if you are in an auto accident. This insurance is assigned to the employee and not the vehicle. State vehicle repair is handled through automobile physical damage coverage. Automobile Liability QA. What do I need to do if I drive a vehicle on state business? You will need to bring a copy of the identification card with you when driving on state business. A card can be located on our website under Risk Management Forms. Am I covered in a personal vehicle if I'm driving on state business? From a liability standpoint, you are covered. If I'm in an accident in a personal vehicle while on state business, are repairs to my vehicle covered? Personal vehicle repair is not covered. Your own insurance will have to cover the cost of the repair. What do I do if I'm involved in an auto accident while on state business? If you're involved in an accident, You will call the number on the card within 24 hours. You will collect the listed information on the card and provide it when you make the call. When is the automobile liability insurance in effect? This insurance is in effect when you are performing job duties for the state. For example, you are covered if you are driving to a meeting to discuss state business. It is not in effect when you are taking care of personal tasks like dropping by the bank. This is true even if the personal task occurs on the way to the work site. Any detours to take care of personal business are not covered by the state policy. It is not in effect during your daily commute to your job site. You must rely on your personal car insurance during this time. A limited set of activities are allowed while driving on state business: stopping to get a meal, obtaining gas for the vehicle in use, providing emergency assistance, visiting restroom facilities, or seeking medical supplies. Am I covered in a rental vehicle? From a liability standpoint, you are covered. Is damage to a rental vehicle covered? Repairs to the rental vehicle are not covered under the automobile liability policy or automobile physical damage coverage. If you're renting a vehicle, you need to do it under the current state rental contract, which will include a loss damage waiver. A loss damage waiver is a type of insurance policy from the car rental company that will keep you from having to pay for any vehicle damage in the case of an accident. If you choose to rent a vehicle outside of the state vehicle contract, you will need to choose to include a loss damage waiver. Can I personally be sued for an accident? You cannot be personally sued under the Georgia Tort Claims Act. State employees have immunity while performing their official duties. Next, let's take a look at general liability insurance. The purpose of the general liability insurance coverage is to protect state agencies from a variety of claims by third parties, including bodily injury, property damage, and personal injury. Most claims that are unrelated to automobile incidents or state employee on-the-job injury come under the general liability category. In order for the state to pay out on general liability claims, there would need to be proof that some degree of negligence on the part of the state contributed. General Liability Q&A. If I am injured on the job as a state employee, do I make a general liability claim? No, this would fall under workers' compensation. Visit Risk Management Insurance Services Workers' Compensation on the DOAS website for more information. How are general liability incidents reported? If a person who is not a state employee is injured or there is an occurrence of third-party property damage, the General Liability Incident Report form should be used to report the incident. Follow the instructions on the form. After completing the form, email or fax it. Optionally, you can also call the indicated number to make the report verbally. Who is responsible for reporting an incident? Anyone who has information about or has been witness to an incident should take responsibility to report it. If uncertain about whether or not a particular incident should be reported, contact Risk Management to ask. If I don't have all the information about an incident, should I wait before reporting it? No, report as much information as you have as soon as you can. Is a general liability claim always covered under the General Liability Agreement? No, although they share a similar name, there is no direct correlation. The determining factor as to what policy details apply, meaning the state torts claims policy or the general liability agreement, is determined by whether or not a claim goes to state or federal court. Finally, let's take a look at professional liability insurance. Professional liability insurance protects state agencies and employees against civil lawsuits from third parties related to financial losses or other perceived damage caused by the state agency or their employees. State employees who interact with the public on a daily basis are more likely to need this coverage, for example, medical personnel or college professors. Professional Liability Q&A. What do you do if you are served with a civil lawsuit related to your job duties? If you receive service of a lawsuit, please note the service date and time of lawsuit. Please notify the Risk Management Liability Department as soon as possible and forward a copy of the lawsuit via fax. Please notify the Attorney General's office as well via fax. For more information about the liability insurance programs, visit the DOAS website and navigate to the indicated areas under Risk Management. Thanks for watching the Introduction to Liability Insurance video.